The Sun newspaper published this list last week. As you can see, it is the best British pound-for-pound boxers of the last 30 years. And one individual who is not included in their top 10 is a certain Mr. Carl Froch. Carl Froch responded by saying the following, quote, "Not putting me in the top 10 is bad news. And I don't know how you can have AJ in the top 10. I'm not giving AJ stick, but he got knocked out by a little fat kid from Mexico. I've never been knocked out in my life, amateur or professional. AJ got beat up by a fat Mexican who we don't even know how good the Mexican is because he's not done anything really. And they've got him in the top 10, end quote. AJ responded to Carl Froch's comments by posting this short clip on his Instagram page, where he called Carl Froch a chatty patty and told him to shut up, a la Stormzy. Froch subsequently tried to clarify his previous comments on his own podcast. He said, quote, "People need to not get misunderstood by the way I talk. I talk from the heart. I tell it how it is. I was having a go at this top 10 list, but that's all it was. I wanted to clear that up. Anthony Joshua, I'm a massive fan of his. He knows I am. But sometimes you just don't know. He'll read something and he'll think, what's Froch talking about now? What beep is he talking now? I've actually had 4 messages off him last night on WhatsApp at midnight, 5 past midnight, 10 past midnight. You know when you read your WhatsApp and it says, this message has been deleted? I've had 4 of them. I'm thinking, what has he wrote there and then deleted and changed his mind? So AJ, if you listen to this, come on mate, send me a message or pick up the phone and give me a ring because you know I've got nothing but love for you." End quote. Now personally, I've seen this coming for a while. I think that Carl Froch has been taking sly digs at AJ for at least the past 18 months. And he's been getting progressively more brazen with the stuff that he's been saying. And I know he kind of disguises it as a constructive criticism and what have you, and just honest punditry. But I'm not so sure about that. I feel like there is part of Carl Froch which is maybe a bit envious of the success and the fame that AJ has actually received. And the reason I say this is not just because of the comments I've heard Froch make over the past 18 months, some pretty snidey comments here and there, but also the fact that he decided to pick on AJ out of that top 10. When really and truly, there were several others he could have picked on out of the top 10 who don't have really that great a resume when you think about it. So Ricky Hatton, I know there's a lot of you out there probably love Ricky Hatton. He was wildly popular in the UK, but who did Ricky Hatton really beat? He beat Costa Tszyu when Costa Tszyu was right at the end of his career. He did it in very ugly fashion. And other than that, there's nothing there. Castillo was way over the hill. He was a shell of himself when Hatton fought him. He ducked Junior Witter, and he beat a bunch of other guys who were just way over the hill. And then when he stepped up to elite level against Pacquiao and Mayweather, he got knocked out both times. He also had controversial decision wins over the likes of Juan Urango. He could have easily lost that, people. And also Collazo, another controversial win for Ricky Hatton. So yeah, to me, Ricky Hatton's inclusion at number 5 is suspect as far as I'm concerned. You could easily put the likes of Prince Nassim certainly above Ricky Hatton. In fact, I'd put Prince Nassim above Ricky Hatton and David Haye in this particular list. But anyway, you could make an argument for moving loads of different fighters around. I'd put Lewis above Calzaghe, definitely, but Calzaghe number 2, that's cool. And in fact, that might have been why Carl Froch was so upset by this particular top 10, the fact that his former rival, Joe Calzaghe, a man who he called out at the end of Calzaghe's career, when Calzaghe had bigger fish to fry at the time. Calzaghe was trying to fight in America against Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins, and Hopkins was still a very, very useful operator at the time. As we know, he went on to have tremendous success even after the Calzaghe fight. So Calzaghe had bigger fish to fry. Carl Froch at the time was still with Mick Hennessy, I think, and he wasn't a big name, not just in world boxing, but even in the UK, he wasn't a particularly big name at the time. So Carl Froch saying that Joe Calzaghe ducked him is laughable, to be honest with you. It's not too dissimilar from James DeGale calling out Carl Froch when Froch was near the end of his career and Froch vacating the title rather than fighting James DeGale. Did Froch duck James DeGale? And I mean, we know that Froch, for example, ducked Adonis Stevenson. He didn't want that smoke. So as much as Carl Froch criticizes people like Joe Calzaghe, he only needs to look at his own career, and there are certain fighters he didn't face in similar circumstances. But as far as Anthony Joshua and the things that Carl Froch said about him getting beaten by this fat Mexican in Andy Ruiz, well, yeah, he did get beat by the fat Mexican, but Lennox Lewis got beat by Oliver McCall, and he got beat by Hasim Ratman. Were either of those guys particularly good? No. So you don't necessarily measure a fighter's whole worth in terms of putting him in a pound for pound list based on who he's lost to. You have to take into account who he's beaten. Anthony Joshua has beaten a Hall of Famer in Vladimir Klitschko. He beat an Olympic gold medalist or former Olympic gold medalist and former world champion in Alexander Povetkin. He beat Dylan White, who's like the #1 contender in the world at the moment. So Anthony Joshua's got plenty of good wins on his resume. Should he be included in the top 10 of the past 30 years? I mean, he has become unified heavyweight champion in a very short space of time, just 24 fights. Think of all what he's done in so few fights. He did a lot more in 24 fights than David Haye did in 24 fights. Obviously, we're not just judging them on their first 24 fights. We're judging them on their careers as a whole or up to this point. So, I mean, look, you can make an argument for why Anthony Joshua should be in the top 10, why he shouldn't. I just find it interesting that of all the names in this top 10, Carl Froch decided to pick on Anthony Joshua. He didn't pick on Ricky Hatton, and he could have easily done that because Ricky Hatton's resume, as far as I'm concerned, isn't that strong. He could have even picked on David Haye. I mean, David Haye beat Mormek, he beat Macronelli, and he beat Chisora at heavyweight. Valoev was a real poor heavyweight champion. Very big, yes, but he was poor. So really and truly, I know there's a lot of us who enjoyed watching David Haye, real explosive fighter, entertaining, etc. But does David Haye deserve to be this high in the rankings above Prince Naseem? I would say hell no. David Haye shouldn't be above Prince Naseem. Should he be above Duke McKenzie and Nigel Benn? I mean, Nigel Benn beat Gerald McClellan, who was a tremendous fighter. Obviously, tragic ending to that fight. He had that draw with Chris Eubank. He did beat Iran Barkley, Doug DeWitt. You know, he beat some decent guys. You could definitely make an argument for Nigel Benn being above David Haye. But anyway, I don't want to get into this whole top 10 pound for pound. Normally, I don't even engage in top 10 pound for pound lists. But with this particular list, it mainly includes or mainly features people who are now retired. So you can look back at their career in their entirety rather than, you know, trying to judge fighters like Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, whose careers are still ongoing. And by the way, putting Tyson Fury up this high when Anthony Joshua is so low, I find that suspect too, to be honest with you, because their careers are ongoing. And putting Tyson Fury as the number 3 fighter in the pound for pound list in British boxing of the past 3 years, based on beating Vladimir Klitschko and Deontay Wilder, I think it's way too premature to have him that high above the likes of Prince Naseem, you know, Duke McKenzie, Nigel Benn, Eubanks Sr. Way too high to have Tyson Fury that high on the list, in my view. But yeah, point is, I think that there is a certain amount of envy there from Carl Froch towards Anthony Joshua, which is why he's decided to pick on him. He might disguise it as honest punditry or whatever the case may be. But no, I think there's a little bit of envy there. Eddie Hearn spoke in a recent interview about how he thinks Carl Froch, being the first pay-per-view fighter that Eddie Hearn had, Audley Harrison notwithstanding, he had to come up the hard way. He had to pay his dues. He had to, you know, go on the road and fight the likes of Andre Durrell. Many people feel like he lost that fight. He lost to Mikkel Kessler, obviously. He lost to Andre Ward. He had, he beat Andre Durrell, but very, very controversially. Many people feel like he lost it. Also, the Jean Pascal fight is a good win for Carl Froch, but again, real close and tough. So, yeah, he did some good things, Carl Froch. But this idea that because he came up the hard way, he deserves extra credit. It's not really about whether you have to come up the hard way and don't get the recognition until later on in your career. It's simply about who you've beaten. And when you look at Carl Froch's resume, does he deserve to be in the top 10? Maybe, but it's not like his resume is crazy strong. The Lucian Bute win is a good win for Carl Froch. Not like Bute was a Hall of Famer or anything, but it's still a good win. Arthur Abraham, way past his best and a blown up middleweight. Who else? Groves. Yeah, Groves was a good win. Groves was a solidish champion. He was never anything special, but still a good win for Carl Froch. The Darrell, I can't really call that a win, to be honest with you. And he lost to Kessler. So, Froch's record is decent, but I don't think he can grumble that much by not being included in the top 10, or for Anthony Joshua being in the top 10 and Carl Froch not being in there. I don't think he can grumble that much, because at least AJ has beaten a Hall of Famer who, yeah, it was his last ever fight, but Vladimir Klitschko still had plenty in the tank in that fight. That wasn't, Vladimir Klitschko looking totally washed up and useless. That was Vladimir Klitschko still looking very, very viable. So anyway, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do you, like me, or did you, like me, suspect that this was going to happen eventually anyway? That Froch and Anthony Joshua were going to bump heads? Because as I say, I've been seeing Carl Froch making some snidey comments about AJ over the past 18 months or so, and AJ has finally reacted. And as far as what AJ said in those WhatsApp messages, it would have been very interesting to find out. But AJ, being the politically correct individual he is, if he'd said something, aggressive or whatever the case may be, threatening towards Carl Froch, or said something that really was a personal attack, then that would have made newspaper headlines all over the place. And I think Anthony Joshua decided to take the smart approach and think, nah, let me not make it that big a story. I've got sponsors, and at the end of the day, Carl Froch is not a heavyweight. I'm not going to fight him. So that publicity is not the kind that I need. Let me delete these messages, because if they go public, then you know what it is. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about this whole story. It's happening. I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.